Hi anatomy students, my name is Marissa, and today, to hopefully help you study a little bit this weekend, we're going to go through the respiratory system on this guy here. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you if you have any questions or confusion, or if you can't make it into lab. So if you want to turn to page 141 in your lab manual, we'll go through this together, and hopefully it'll be a really good study tool for you. Okay, so we're going to start with the first thing on your list, which is the nose. We all know where the nose is, so it's right here. Got our nose, then we have our nares, which are our nostrils, right here, and then we have our nasal septum, which if you can imagine if there was another half of the face, kind of the bone and cartilage separating our nasal cavity, which is made up of our vomer and our ethmoid bones, would be right here, so that would be our nasal septum. And then we have our nasal cavity, which is this whole space I'm outlining with my finger right now. It's the nasal cavity. And then we have our hard palate, which is this bone right here. It's a whole hard palate. And then we have our soft palate, which is right here. Okay, and the next thing we're going to go through is kind of sneaky. It's the posterior nasal aperture. So it's an imaginary line, and its purpose is to define the beginning of the pharynx. So I'm going to show you how to find that. So the first thing you do is you find the end of the hard palate, which is right here, okay? And you see this hole right here? We go right anterior to that hole with a line. So from the hard palate to right in front of that hole, so kind of where my finger is. So that would be the posterior nasal aperture, and therefore defining the beginning of the pharynx. So there's three parts of the pharynx, so I'm going to go through them with you now. So from that posterior nasal aperture down to the soft palate, we have our nasal pharynx, so this region right here. And then from the tip of the soft palate down to the tip of the epiglottis, which we'll get to here in a little bit, that is your oropharynx, so this area right here. And the last area is pretty small. It goes from that tip of the epiglottis down to where the larynx makes a full ring, but it doesn't include the larynx. So it's just the space behind it. That's the laryngopharynx. So those are the three parts of the pharynx. So next on your list we have our larynx, which is this whole area right here. And note, it doesn't go all the way down here. We'll talk about that in a second, just to here. But this is the larynx, right here, larynx. And then we have our thyroid cartilage, which is right here, makes up the Adam's apple. It does not have a back. So keep in mind, this is not the thyroid cartilage. This is actually the cricoid cartilage, which its front part, anterior portion, is this little guy right here, Roman numeral 3. So this is the cricoid cartilage, and then this is the thyroid cartilage. Okay, and then we have our epiglottis, which is this cartilage right here. It's the first cartilage, right there, epiglottis. And then we have our vestibular folds, which if you can see, there's kind of a bump here, a space, and then another bump. So superior, the first bump is your vestibular folds, also called the false vocal cords. And that space between there is called the ventricle of the larynx. So this is the ventricle of the larynx right there. And the other bump on the bottom right here is your vocal folds, which is the true vocal cords. So now the glottis is kind of tricky to explain, especially over video, but I'll do my best. So if you can imagine that my finger is another true vocal cord, and if I were to put it here, the space between my finger and the other true vocal cord would be the glottis. Okay, if that makes sense. So between the two vocal folds, the space between them is the glottis. Okay, and then we have our trachea, which if you remember I said the larynx ended here. So after the cricoid cartilage, everything below it is trachea. So this little bit here on the bottom is considered trachea. Alright, so that's everything you need to know on this model. I hope that was helpful, and good luck studying, guys. You can do it. I know you'll all do awesome. The TAs and I are praying for you, but email us, text us if you have any questions, and good luck. I know you'll do great.